Elias Thorne strode through the rusted iron gates, his expensive leather shoes crunching on fallen leaves, a sound that seemed ridiculously loud in the profound silence. This was the old Blackwood Cemetery, a forgotten patch of history on the cusp of becoming his next gleaming commercial complex. The afternoon sun, weak and watery, barely pierced the canopy of ancient gnarled oaks, leaving most of the overgrown grounds shrouded in perpetual twilight. Crumbling headstones, tilted like forgotten teeth, bore names eroded by time and weather, their stories lost to all but the earth itself. Elias merely saw prime real estate, a minor inconvenience soon to be leveled. He smirked, picturing the modern glass and steel rising where these moss-draped monuments now stood. His foreman, a nervous man named Miller, met him near a particularly ornate but cracked mausoleum. "Mr. Thorne, the crew's having some issues. Equipment failures, strange cold spots. One of the excavators swears he saw a child's handprint appear on his window from the inside after he locked it." Elias scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "Superstitious nonsense. Pay them more if they need a psychological boost, but keep them on schedule. This graveyard is dead, Miller. Let's make some money." But the graveyard, it seemed, was far from dead. That night, in his opulent, sterile penthouse, Elias found a single withered rose petal on his pillow, despite having no flowers in his apartment. He dismissed it as a cleaning oversight. The next day, back at Blackwood, a faint, reedy whisper seemed to brush his ear, a sound like dried leaves skittering across pavement, calling his name. He spun around, seeing nothing but the silent, unmoving trees. Later, as he reviewed blueprints in his portable office trailer, the heavy oak door creaked open, then slammed shut with a force that rattled the very foundations, even though there was no wind. He felt a prickle of unease then, a cold whisper against the back of his neck that lingered long after he spun around to find only empty air. The disturbances grew bolder, more personal. He started finding old, tarnished pennies laid out in precise rows on his desk, an odd antique locket appearing in his freshly pressed suits. The whispers intensified, weaving his name with snatches of ancient laments, words of betrayal, promises of vengeance. One night, a child's mournful crying echoed through his empty penthouse, seeming to emanate from the very walls, until he snapped on every light, heart hammering against his ribs, to find only silence. He tried to rationalize it all away, blaming stress, lack of sleep, the general creepiness of old cemeteries. But a cold dread began to coil in his gut, a serpent slowly tightening its grip. His sleep became a torment. He dreamt of the cemetery, but alive, pulsing with resentment. The headstones wept stone tears, the trees groaned like suffering souls, and from the disturbed earth forms began to coalesce. A stern-faced man with a bristly beard, his clothes appearing like shredded gravecloth, pointed a skeletal finger at him. A young woman, her spectral gown flowing like mist, her eyes hollow, seemed to glide towards her, her silent scream echoing in his mind. The child, the one from his waking nightmares, simply stood, a shadow with glowing, sorrowful eyes, radiating an unbearable cold. They were the residents of Blackwood, the forgotten, and their peace had been irrevocably shattered. One afternoon, as the bulldozers roared, tearing into the earth, a sudden, inexplicable gust of wind swept through the graveyard. Not just a breeze, but a localized gale that ripped the hard hats from the workers' heads and sent debris flying. Elias, watching from a distance, saw a shimmering, translucent wave ripple through the air, and then, impossibly, the engines of every piece of heavy machinery sputtered, coughed, and died, leaving an eerie, profound silence. The air grew impossibly heavy, charged with an invisible electricity. He decided to go to the site himself, to understand, to confront, to prove his sanity. As he stepped out of his car, a chorus of whispers erupted around him, not just in his ears, but seeming to emanate from the very ground beneath him, from the rustling leaves, from the deep shadows. "They desecrate us," a low, guttural voice hissed, clear as if spoken directly into his ear. Then a child's high-pitched wail pierced the air, filled with an ancient, bone-chilling sorrow. The headstones around him began to glow with a faint, phosphorescent light, and the ground itself seemed to vibrate with a restless energy. Elias stumbled backward, a genuine terror seizing him. He saw them then, not as clear figures, but as distortions in the air, rippling outlines of forgotten people surrounding him. The cold was absolute, a chill that sank into his very bones, stealing his breath. The stern man, the grieving woman, the sorrowful child, and countless others, their presence a palpable pressure, a suffocating demand for restitution. He heard their collective thoughts, their ancient pain, their rage at his arrogance, at his greed. They wanted more than an apology. They wanted restitution, an end to the disturbance. Driven by an instinct beyond fear, Elias dropped to his knees, clutching at the cold, damp earth. "Stop!" he screamed, his voice cracking, swallowed by the unnatural quiet. "I'll stop! I'll leave this place be! I swear it!" As if a switch had been flicked, the oppressive presence lightened, the glowing headstones faded, the whispers retreated. The chill slowly receded, leaving him shivering, drenched in sweat. From that day forward, Blackwood Cemetery remained untouched. Elias Thorne, a changed man, used his vast wealth not to develop, but to restore. He hired historians, archaeologists, landscapers. The broken headstones were repaired, the paths cleared, and a new ornate fence was erected, not to keep people out, but to honor those within. He never spoke of what happened, but the haunted look in his eyes and his sudden, almost obsessive reverence for history told its own silent story. The spirits of Blackwood, finally at peace, watched over their hallowed ground, their revenge exacted not through destruction, but through the profound transformation of a man's heart. And sometimes, on a quiet afternoon, a lone, withered rose petal would appear on Elias's desk, a subtle reminder that some debts are paid not in money, but in respect.